Okay, so today's video is going to be what you need to look for when you're considering investing in a new area. But again, the principles that I'm going to explain are the ones that we apply to our portfolio, have done for years. And even if you're not applying them to a new area and you're just new to property investing, applying these principles to your selected area will help you decide whether or not it's a good area or not. Now, before I get into the full nuts and bolts, remember, you always need to do your due diligence, okay? You must make sure you're listening to people more experienced than you that have hopefully got a larger portfolio than you, been around longer than you, and so on. So again, always listen to their experience, take on their advice, but most importantly, ask them about the mistakes that they've made, which obviously you can hopefully prevent really or minimize. So at the moment now, we're looking to invest in a couple of other areas close to our main investment area. Now, the things that we always need to do, and because we've been doing it so long now, it's natural for us, but I thought to myself, putting out this quick video will help people hopefully make more informed decisions when they're looking to invest in the first few properties or, again, expand into other areas. So the Black Belt framework for investing really, for us, just imagine a simple spreadsheet now. So property price on one column, then if you're going down the mortgage route, you know, the amount of deposit needed, which is often 25%, therefore the remaining 75% is the loan. Then, now this is where, I'm not going to say it starts to get complicated, but this is where you need to break it up a little bit. You always want to be basing the interest rates, interest only, on at least 1% higher than the current rate, okay? Now, I'll speak about that later as well, but for instance, I was speaking to the broker yesterday, and what at this current time, a reasonable mortgage product is for a buy-to-let and a limited company, again, just boring vanilla type of stuff, 4.69 plus, you know, approximately £1,500 product fee. Now, never, again, if you might have been watching my videos prior to this as well, never get seduced by the headline rate. So 4.69 might sound good. Somebody else you might speak to might say, well, I've got one for 4.19 or 3.89. But the things that they don't often tell you, again, is that it's suddenly got a 5% product fee or something ridiculous like a £5,000 product fee or a £7,500 product fee, or even worse, large, not even worse, but just on par really, large early redemption charges, early redemption fees. So never get seduced by what appears to be a low headline rate. So going back to that spreadsheet then, so you're going to have your purchase price in one column. Down the next column then will be the deposit needed, 25% of that, which will then obviously leave you the 75%, which will be the loan. Now on top of that then, and again, put in a product fee if you wish there when you've been speaking to your broker, but if not, if at your early stages, then you can leave that out. And from there, work out in the next column what the interest rate will be, or should I say what the interest per year would be. Now, I do mention this in my book, The Property Investor's Blueprint. So if you haven't invested in a copy yet, have a look on Amazon. It's available on hardback, paperback. I think there's an ebook version there as well. So it talks a little bit about the Black Belt framework that we use to grow our portfolio and have done for many years really. Now, what you then want to do is you've then got the loan amount and how much is to be paid each year. Now, again, we must understand, and I'm sure you do this anyway, that is not 100% profit, and that's the best case scenario. Okay, so if you're looking at a property, and let's do it for argument's sake, easy maths, it's going to cash flow £500 per calendar month. 500 times 12 is £6,000 per year. That's the best situation. That's the most cash flow you will have from that property without obviously refinance, without taking into consideration refinance and so on. Now, experience has told us, obviously, when we analyse our portfolio every quarter, every 6 months, every year and so on, and looking back over numerous years, you're looking at about, or our portfolio, we're looking at always a 3 to 3.5% void period. Now again, those aren't national averages, definitely not. It's where experience comes into play and knowing where to buy and so on. And our maintenance, and this can fluctuate really, it can go from anywhere from like 2-3% to 11%. Okay, So it just depends. Again, here's another little factor really. If you've done the BRRR with that property and you've done a really in-depth refurbishment, then often, touch wood, it doesn't need that much maintenance. However, if you've purchased a property that you might not have spent that much on and haven't really done anything to, then what you'll find is that maintenance issues will crop up. So again, either way you're going to pay for it. It's whether or not you pay for it right up front and do the BRRR method, or pay for it like a drip down effect over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years of ownership. So going back to what I said, because I know I'm jumping around a lot here. Okay, on the spreadsheet we have purchase price, deposit at 25%, loan at 75%. You're then going to be able to calculate the interest based on 5.5% of the 75% loan. Again, that's in my book. Have a look at that. I may have even done, I think I've done a YouTube video on that as well. And then that gives you the best cash flow situation per year. Now, we then multiply that by 0.9, or should I say reduce 10% of that. So if the best cash flow is £6,000 per year, we're going to reduce that by 10%, which 10% of 6,000 is 600. So the best cash flow will be 5,400. Now again, you can, if you wish, tweak those numbers to say, right, rather than 10%, I'm going to push it to 12.5. I'm really going to push it to 15. But don't assume that there's going to be no void periods or no maintenance, okay? Gas safety, that's going to be £75 to £90. So that's one thing straight away. Now, what you then need to do is going back to the interest rate. So we're basing them at the moment now on best case scenario 5.5%, but we will also stress test it to 6.5% and 7.5%. The last thing you want to do is analyze a deal and think that everything's going to go well, that there's not going to be any issues during the first 12 months, that your tenant's going to stay in straight away, that you're going to get a tenant immediately, and interest rates are going to remain fixed. Now, of course, if you're locking in your mortgage products fixed for 2, 3, 5 years, whatever, brilliant. You've got an idea of, well, you haven't got an idea, you know exactly how much that mortgage payment is going to be each and every month for that product, which, like I said, might be 2, 3, 5 year fixed. So the black belt framework really then, and again, I'm only going one layer with this really, because there's obviously sub layers within that. You want to always stress test the interest rates, plus 1%, plus 2%. You then want to stress test the rental amount. So for these investment areas that we're looking in now at the moment, in our main investment area, we had a look yesterday, there's 35 properties available and 35 properties available and 53 have obviously already been let. So altogether, 53 properties were available, 35 are still available, and then 35 take away 53, 16, 17, whatever have let. So it was probably, I don't know, what's that, 30-ish%, 33% or something have let. So now that isn't only the metric you need to look at, because if again you're just seeing it on a black and white spreadsheet, you might think, oh, that's terrible, there's all these properties available. This is again where your knowledge needs to come into play. The properties that are still available, when was the first or the oldest listed property? Okay, so in our investment area, the one where we've got most of our portfolio, the oldest listed property was middle of December. Now this video now is being filmed on the 2nd or 3rd of March, but the one that was the oldest listed in the middle of December was overpriced and it wasn't ready to move into. Okay, it looked quite dated. It wasn't a dive, but it looked quite dated and it was already overpriced. So that's straight away, that's pretty much, well, you can't really consider that. The next one then was early in January, I think about 7th or 8th of January. And although it was quite a nice looking property, it was still on the top end of things. The ones that are shifting a lot are those that are priced reasonably in relation to their area and the property specification, the finish of the property. So let's always remember that, okay? And then the newest ones listed were 2 or 3 days ago. So you then want to look at the spread of rents, because I know in our investment area, you could get a 2-bed terraced for probably absolute cheapest with a 25, 30-year-old kitchen, 25, 30-year-old bathroom, an old wooden door, you know, it hasn't even had new carpets down. In our main investment area, probably 650-ish. Okay, and again, you know, it's not stock that we'd acquire or anything like that. It's not an asset that we'd like to have in our portfolio. But the ones then, again, for another 2-bed, you can go up to 900, maybe 950. Okay, apologies about that, I'm back. So from there, again, you need to know the spread of rents and then work out the average rent. So for this new investment area we're looking at, the rent is only £650 per calendar month, but £675 per calendar month, sorry. But the spread is 75%, £75 either way. So there's some there from 595, and then there's some 675 plus 75 up to 750. When you're obviously creating your spreadsheet, and again, you know, if your mentees watching this, the ones that I work with on a one-to-one basis, if we haven't gone over this, which I'm sure we have, then ask me for it. And again, I'll spend a lot of time going over it and hopefully, you know, trying to make sure you realise how important it is. You then want to make sure that when you've got the spread of rents, take the average, and then what happens if we don't get that and we get the lower rent? And then does the deal still work if we get this lower rent and interest rates creep up at 2%? So you always want to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly type of situation with it, okay? What happens if, you know, the rent's low and the rent's low, and, you know, if we don't get that much going for it and there's quite a high interest rate at the time? Or what happens if we break the rental ceiling because there's a lot of demand and the current rate that we're basing our interest on remains the same? Okay, and then you want to be working in the middle there somewhere. So again, always consider and have a look at the return on capital employed. Now, before you go looking into other areas, one of the last things you want to do is go to the area first to view properties, and then afterwards do your analysis, because you're then going to be emotionally tied to it and think, well, you know, I like that property, it was a nice area, XYZ, it's got nice schools around it, and then you might try to fudge the numbers, which is the worst thing you could ever do. You want to make sure that if somebody presented a deal to me, or like when I'm working with joint venture partners, I do not show them a picture of the property, okay, because that's really irrelevant. If you're just looking for returns on your money, what difference does it make what the property's like? We need to be always looking at how much money's coming in, how much we're likely to get back, and obviously on a yearly basis, and how long is it going to take to possibly refinance a property, or if I'm not looking to refinance a property, how long does it take for me to get my money back, and so on like that. So we always need to be looking at it through the eyes of objective, not subjective. I'm not bothered what the property looked like. Tell me what the figures are, because obviously when you're coming to pay your accounts and so on like that, of course you're going to take into consideration the net value of the properties, but they're not going to be having a look at how nice that particular property is. So again, always have a look at it through what we call the black belt framework. Does the deal work? Does it cash flow from day one? Again, I didn't mention this at the start, but can I purchase it and can I lock in profit from day one? Because that really then is going to help you. It gets a head start. If you're overpaying for a property, it's going to be quite bad. Okay, so I'm going to stop it there again. Part 3. Hopefully this is going to be the last part. So when you've got your spreadsheet then, and like I said, it's got lots of line items on it, or lots of columns there. The next level that we want to be looking at really is the 3-year cash flow projections and 5-year cash flow projections, and you may even want to be building into that side of the spreadsheet as well increments in the rents and also any capital appreciation. Now, the thing is with the capital appreciation, again, I've covered it in my book, the property cycle, you know, over a 20-year period, property does not go up in a linear fashion like that. So time across here and value up there, it doesn't go up like that. What we'll always find in the property cycle is after the recession, you've got the recovery period, quite flat and plateaus, there's then a little bit of a spike, then the mid-cycle crash, and then it goes up again. And obviously the last thing you want to be doing is buying in this winner's curse period here, which who knows, could be could be the next 3 months, could be the next 6 months, because the property will never be that high for a number of years. But what we need to remember about property cycle is that this dip here is always higher than the previous dip, you know, 15, 18, 20 years beforehand. So with the capital appreciation, you've always got to treat that as a little bit of, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, over a 5-year period, you might want to base it at 3%, you might want to base it at 4%, 5%, but I would never be basing it on, you know, 8, 9, 10%, because yes, that might happen over a number of years, but in 1 year, you know, unless you bought at a really good price and you're at the right position in the property cycle, that it's not going to be really a true reflection of the property and obviously the cash flow and the projections that it could bring, really. So going back to the black belt framework then, I would, again, one, don't just look at the property and get seduced by the fact that it's got a nice windows, nice doors, it's got lovely carpet, it's got a nice little back garden, you know, it's got fantastic transport links. Those are all selling points, of course, yeah, and tenants are going to appreciate that, or maybe even on the flip, you know, if you're flipping the property. But for you, for one of your long-term rentals, really boring vanilla 2-bed, 3-bed, terraced, you know, end townhouse semis and so on, you want to make sure that you're looking at it black and white, strip everything back. What's the purchase price? What's the stamp duty I'm going to pay on that purchase price? What are the legals, including searches and so on, £1,500, £1,800? Then how much money am I putting in? How much money am I going to get back out at the end of year 1, at the end of year 2, at the end of year 3, and so on? What's the cash flow like? Taking into consideration the fact that I'm going to reduce it by 10%, and that's going to be my best case scenario for that cash flow each year. And what happens if I don't reach the rent that I'm hoping to reach? What happens if I need to reduce it by 10%? Okay, so like I said before, if I want to rent it for $750, I might only get $695, $675 for it. Does the deal still work then? What happens if it's empty for maybe 3 months? Am I still going to make money at the end of the year? So there's so many factors we need to consider, but the ones that you don't have any control of are interest rates. Yes, you could lock it in, so you're locked in then for 2, 3, 5 years, whatever, but you know, when you're coming out of that, the product that you move on to next, interest rates, you know, may have increased. So I would definitely stress test the deal with at least plus 1% and plus 2%. So again, to mention the figures or recap on the figures that I mentioned at the start, 4.69 with a £1,500 product fee on a limited company buy to let is pretty much one of the best deals that we can get at the moment with, I don't like to say reputable provider, reputable lender, because there are other lenders out there that will provide lower rates, however will absolutely nail you to the cross if, especially if it's a bridging loan, you're going over and so on like that. So I'd always be tempted to stick with the ones that are fairly flexible. Yes, the rates might not be amazing compared to those, but you know that obviously you're going to get a better service for it. I'm not talking customer service, I'm talking about sleep tax. Okay, so I mentioned this to a few people. Can you put your head on the pillow at night and easily go to bed to sleep, or are you going to put your head on the pillow and think, right, well, it's getting close to the end of the bridge now, I've now got a massive fee to pay, plus then this? Just always take that into consideration. You probably want to invest your profits, your money into property because of the benefits, but at the same time, you don't want to be investing your money into property to then have your stress and anxiety levels going through the roof, really. So just to recap then, maybe invest in a copy of that. It's, like I said, it's available on hardback there, paperback, The Property Investor's Blueprint, myself, Dervish. So have a look on Amazon, and hopefully it's an enjoyable read for you. Hopefully you gain some value from it. If so, please share a review with other people, because obviously the reviews matter a lot on Amazon, and it will be greatly appreciated. Keep taking steps further forward, keep getting up, keep showing up, and keep investing in that knowledge and mindset, okay? I know I'm like a broken record at the end of these videos, but invest in your knowledge is one thing, but apply that knowledge as well, okay? Set yourself goals and apply the knowledge that you're gaining all the time. Good luck, take care, and I hope this provided some value. All the best.